Imagine waking up in total darkness. Your body is stiff. Your breathing is shallow. You try to move, but your arms are pinned at your sides. You reach up, and your fingers scrape against cold, unyielding wood. You scream, but no one can hear you, because 6 feet above you, the world has already moved on. This isn't just a nightmare. This has happened more times than you'd ever want to believe. And tonight we're diving into one of the most terrifying cases of all time. A case so chilling, it became legend. The story of Midnight Mary, the woman who was buried alive. But that's just the beginning. Because history is filled with horrifying cases of people being trapped in their own graves. Some, like Mary, were discovered too late. But others, they woke up just in time. Stay with me till the end, because what we're about to uncover will keep you up at night. Mary Hart was like any other woman. She lived a quiet life in New Haven, Connecticut, but her death was anything but ordinary. One night, Mary collapsed. Her family rushed to her side, but she wasn't moving. Her pulse was weak, her breathing shallow, and then it stopped. The doctor arrived, examined her body, and gave his verdict. Mary was dead. Her family, devastated, arranged a funeral. The next day she was buried in the local cemetery, sealed inside a coffin under 6 feet of earth. But that night, her aunt had a dream, a nightmare so vivid, so disturbing, that she jolted awake in a cold sweat. She saw Mary inside the coffin, not resting, not at peace, but awake. Her hands clawing at the wooden lid, her mouth open in a silent scream. Panicked, the aunt begged Mary's family to dig her up. At first they dismissed her. It was just a dream, a trick of grief. But she insisted, she pleaded, until they finally agreed. The next morning, they exhumed Mary's grave, and when they opened the coffin, what they saw made their blood run cold. Mary's body was twisted in agony. Her fingers were raw, broken nails embedded in the wooden lid. The inside of the coffin was scratched to splinters. She had been buried alive. Mary had awoken after her burial, trapped in the darkness, suffocating, clawing at the coffin, desperately trying to escape, but no one had heard her cries. And by the time they opened the coffin, it was too late. Her gravestone still stands today, marked with an eerie inscription. The people shall be troubled at midnight and pass away. A warning, or perhaps a confession. You might think this was a one-time tragedy, but history tells a different story. Before modern medicine, doctors couldn't always tell when someone was truly dead. Many illnesses, catalepsy, epilepsy, even deep comas, could slow the heart and breathing to almost nothing, making the living appear lifeless. And so people were buried before their time. It happened so often that people lived in constant fear of premature burial. In the 18th and 19th centuries, safety measures were invented, some of them straight out of horror movies. Safety coffins equipped with bells and breathing tubes so the dead could ring for help. Spring-loaded lids designed to pop open in case of movement. Waiting mortuaries where corpses were left above ground for days just in case they woke up. And these fears weren't unfounded because some did wake up. Marjorie McCall's death seemed ordinary. She fell ill with a fever, and soon her heart stopped. Her husband, shattered with grief, buried her the next day in a cemetery in Lurgan, Northern Ireland. But late that night, grave robbers came. They had heard a gold ring had been buried with her, and they wanted it. When they dug up the grave and pried open the coffin, they reached for her hand, but the ring was stuck. So one of them pulled out a knife. The moment the blade touched her skin, her eyes snapped open. She gasped, sat up and screamed. The robbers, they ran for their lives. Marjorie clawed her way out of the grave and staggered home. When her husband opened the door and saw his dead wife standing there, he fainted on the spot. Marjorie went on to live many more years, outliving her husband. When she finally died, for real this time, her gravestone bore an eerie inscription, "Lived once, buried twice." Accidental burials are horrifying enough, but history also has cases of intentional live burials. In ancient Rome, some criminals were sealed inside tombs as a form of execution. In pre-Islamic Arabia, unwanted newborn girls were buried alive, a horrific practice later outlawed. And in modern history, there's the case of Carol and Reggie Sumner. In 2005, Carol and Reggie, an elderly couple in Florida, were kidnapped by criminals looking to steal their money. They were tied up, shoved into the trunk of their car, and driven to a remote area. Their captors forced them to hand over their bank details, and once they had the information they wanted, they buried them alive. Carol and Reggie begged for mercy. They screamed, they fought, but the dirt kept piling on. They suffocated in the darkness. Days later, the killers were caught, celebrating with the stolen money. Their crime was called one of the most heartless murders in history. Throughout history, people have feared the grave, and for good reason. Even with today's medical advancements, could it still happen? Could someone, right now, be waking up underground? We may never know, but next time you walk through a graveyard at night and you hear a soft scratching sound beneath your feet, are you sure the dead are really dead? Or is someone still trying to get out? What do you think? Would you ever dare to visit a cemetery at midnight? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more chilling stories, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the bell, because The Haunting Truth has many more nightmares to share. See you in the next one, if you're still awake.